friends, and welcome back to the Sweatable podcast. My name is Brooks Herbis, and I'm an online fitness, nutrition, and mindset coach who's here to help you simplify and make sense out of the all too confusing fitness and nutrition industry. Let's be real, there's a lot of conflicting information online, and it can be hard to know what's legit and who to trust. In every episode, I'll be sharing the science and psychology behind health, fitness, and long-lasting behavior change. But I'll also be sharing real-life practical application, because all of the best info in the world only matters if you can actually apply it to your real life. So grab a coffee, water, glass of wine, or lace up your walking shoes, and let's dive in. Hello, you guys. Oh, I'm losing my voice a little bit. Welcome back to the Sweat Simple podcast. That's what happens, I guess, when you coach 2 classes in the morning and then attempt to record a podcast. But I am so excited because I feel like our last few episodes have been more mindset focused. And as you guys know, mindset is a huge component of my fitness coaching. I am so confident in the fact that mindset is the thing that is holding 90% of people back from reaching their goals. But at the same time, sometimes we just need education. Sometimes we need the nutrition education, the science behind building muscle. So today is one of those more sciencey episodes that are about the nitty-gritty behind fitness and nutrition. So today we are talking all about pre and post workout nutrition. So what should you eat before you're working out to build muscle, and what should you be eating after your workout? We'll talk about meal timing, all that good stuff. But I want to give the caveat before we even dive into this episode that this is one of the last things that you should focus on. And I know that sounds insane coming from a personal trainer and nutrition coach. That probably sounds crazy, having someone tell you not to go all in on your pre and post workout nutrition and make sure that you're eating the exact right mix of foods at the exact right mix of time to optimize your muscle growth. But the truth is that so many people get lost in the nitty-gritty details. Before you have the basics locked down, you are dialing in on these like really tiny things that truly, completely, honestly, are only moving the needle a very small percent. And in fact, they're not really going to move the needle at all until you have those basics figured out and those basics locked down. So pre and post workout nutrition won't make much of a difference until you have the foundation laid, until you have the basics down. So if you're trying to build muscle, what should you be focusing on first before we think about how we're fueling before and after our workouts? First thing you need to focus on is following a strength training program. That is number one. At this point, if you are really trying to seriously build muscle, random workouts are not going to cut it. Whether it's random workouts that you found on Instagram, or you're following an app program that is not rooted in progressive overload, or you love taking your random fitness classes, maybe even your local Pilates class, those are all great for exercise. Those are all great for overall health. Those are all great to keep you moving. But when you are serious about building muscle, and I know you are serious about building muscle because you're listening to a podcast about how to optimize your nutrition before and after your workouts, you have to be following a strength training program. And that strength training program has to be rooted in progressive overload. And progressive overload is just a fancy way of saying that we are adding additional stimulus to your muscle as time goes on. So your muscles adapt, and in order to grow bigger, in order to get stronger, you need to apply additional stimulus to basically signal to your muscles like, hey, I'm trying to do a little bit more here. You need to adapt to that, and you need to get bigger, and you need to get stronger. So additional stimulus could look like increasing weight. That's the basic example. So increasing weight over the course of the program. It could look like increasing reps or sets, but it could also be things like playing around with tempo, using 1.5 reps, doing a more difficult exercise selection. So instead of like incline push-ups, doing push-ups on the floor. It could also look like less rest time. That one, though, you want to use strategically because sometimes we need the full rest time in order to get stronger. But that is a whole other podcast. I won't get into the science behind that right now. But very, very important to make sure that you are following a strength training program that's rooted in progressive overload. If you are not doing that, nothing else that I'm going to talk about matters. If you are still showing up to the gym and you are doing random exercises, and if you are not tracking your progress, and if you are not making things more difficult as time goes on, you are not going to be effectively building muscle. You might build muscle, but it's going to take you a heck of a lot longer than if you followed a program and if that program was rooted in progressive overload. Along with that, we also want to make sure that you are lifting heavy enough and bringing enough intensity. So if you are like flying through your reps and on your final rep, you feel like you could like keep going and your heart rate is really, really high your whole workout and you're sweating and you're like feeling that like burn, you're probably not lifting with intensity. Because if you were lifting with true intensity and if you were lifting heavy enough, you would need that full 2 to 3 minutes of rest, or 1 to 3 minutes, or again, I'm not going to get into rest time in this podcast. I need to chill out. You would need that rest time in between your sets in order to recover. If you feel like you could keep going right into your next exercise, and if you feel like your heart rate is elevated the entire workout and you're dripping sweat, you're not lifting heavy enough. There is a difference between lifting with intensity and just making yourself sweat and feel like you're working hard. Those are two different things. You can lift really heavy and you can bring a lot of intensity to your individual lifts without dripping sweat, without having your heart rate through the roof for your entire workout, without burning a ton of calories. So you should be lifting with intensity, but that intensity is going to feel a lot different than just a cardio workout. This kind of lifting is going to feel very different in your body than a continuous like cardio workout. So you want to make sure that you are lifting heavy enough and bringing enough intensity. A good rule of thumb is that your last 2 to 3 reps are feeling really tough. Like almost like it's hard to do any more reps with really good form. That's a good indicator that you're in the right intensity range and you're bringing enough intensity to your workouts in order to, signal to your muscles you're trying to do something harder. They need to adapt. What else we need to focus on is recovery. So again, I'm not going to get into rest times, but I do want to talk about recovery in between your lifts. Your program ideally is allowing for 48 hours between working the same muscle groups. So that means if you're working legs on Monday, the earliest you would touch legs again would be Wednesday. And ideally, it's looking more like Thursday. Reason being is you want to give your muscles enough time to properly recover before that next lifting session. If you're entering a lifting session working the same muscle groups and your muscles aren't properly recovered, you're entering that lifting session in a deficit. So you're not going to be able to go as heavy. You're not going to be able to pick up a heavier weight, which then means that you're not going to be able to improve strength and build more muscle in the same way as if you were entering that program fully recovered. So ideally, you're allowing for 48 hours in between working the same muscle group. Now, what you could do is work different muscle groups. So for my clients, typically they're following a lower upper split if we're working out 4 days a week. So what that could look like is Monday lower, Tuesday upper, rest day or cardio on Wednesday, Thursday lower, Friday upper. So you're still working out back-to-back days, but you're working different muscle groups, which again is why intentional programming is really important as opposed to just doing random exercises. I think people assume that in order to build muscle, you just have to pick up weights. That is not true. I spent the entire summer, longer than that, it was like 5 months, going through a programming course which goes through the entire science of how to properly program workouts for specific goals, like building muscle, like building strength, like building power. And guys, let me just tell you, there is so much science that goes into it, and you have to be so intentional when you are programming for individual goals. So these random workouts really are just not going to get you that optimal result that you're really looking for. Last and most importantly, we need to follow this program consistently. So it's one thing to have the most perfect program in the world. It's another thing to make sure that we're actually doing this program in a consistent manner. So we're showing up week after week, we're completing the workouts, we're doing almost every single workout over a month. Of course, there are going to be times where we miss a workout or we miss a week of workouts because of travel, but for the most part, we are showing up, we are staying consistent. So first things first, before we dive into anything on the nutrition front, you need to be following a strength training program. Now, the second thing that we really need to focus on before we get into pre and post workout nutrition is overall protein. If you are not hitting your overall protein target when you're eating it, doesn't matter. So doesn't matter if you're eating it before your workout, doesn't matter if you're eating it after workout. If you are not hitting that protein target, the timing of your protein does not matter. So focus on overall protein first before you focus on timing. Good rule of thumb is 0.7 grams to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. If you're not hitting that first, doesn't really matter when you're eating it. So set your protein target and make sure you're hitting that number first. Now, do you need proteins, shakes, bars? You don't. Again, if you are hitting your overall protein, that is what matters most. The shakes, the bars, they can be helpful when it comes to like if you're not able to hit your protein with whole food sources, those can be helpful, but they are not necessary. And if you need help, you need some high protein snack ideas, I actually have a high protein snack guide. So shoot me a DM on Instagram with the word protein and I'll send you over that snack guide. Obviously it's free, but it'll give you some high protein snack ideas. So not necessary to have the shakes, the bars, the supplements. If you're hitting with whole food sources, that would be ideal. You also need to make sure that you're eating enough. So if you're really trying to build muscle, if you're brand new to training, like within your first year of strength training in this way, it is possible to lose fat and build muscle at the same time. But after a certain amount of time, after you've been strength training in this way for a longer period of time, it becomes near impossible to build muscle and lose fat at the same time. So if building muscle is really important to you, after a certain period of time, you will need to eat at least in maintenance, but possibly even in a surplus if you're like trying to build a large amount of muscle in a shorter period of time. So that is also very important. We need to make sure that we are properly fueling for our goals. If the main goal is fat loss, a calorie deficit is great. If your main goal ever becomes building muscle, then we need to focus on that and we need to make sure we're eating enough. I do have a whole podcast episode that I'll link in the show notes that talks all about body recomposition, what it is, can you lose fat and build muscle at the same time, the nitty gritty of it. So I'll link that in the show notes as well. But know that we really want to make sure we're eating enough for whatever our goal is. Now that you are following a strength training program that is rooted in progressive overload, we're eating enough protein, then we can start to talk about pre and post workout nutrition. So food is fuel, period. You want to make sure that we're properly fueling for our workouts and properly replenishing our glycogen stores with carbs and building and repairing our muscles with protein post-workout. That is simple of the simple. We want to fuel our workouts with food. We want to replenish our glycogen, build and repair our muscles with a mix of carbs and protein after workout. Don't overcomplicate this. This is where people get lost. They try to jigsaw all of these little tiny little things, focus on like the nitty gritty. It's just not necessary. Don't overcomplicate it. I'm going to share my general rule of thumbs for pre and post workout fuel. So if you have time to eat a big meal like 1 to 2 hours before your workout, you want to make sure that you're getting a mix of carbs and protein. That's best. So that is going to give you enough time to allow that food to actually fuel your workout. So big meal 1 to 2 hours before, mix of carb and protein. If you don't have that time, like let's say you work out first thing in the morning, I would shoot for a small amount of simple carbs. And simple carbs are also known as fast digesting carbs. And you want to try and eat that like 15 to 30 minutes before your workout. That's going to give you an immediate energy source to use for your workouts. Simple carbs would be things like cereal, any sort of white bread, so white pasta, white toast, a handful of pretzels, even fruit or candy. You guys might have seen there was a TikTok trend like a couple years ago of people eating a white Rice Krispie treat right before their workout. It's because a Rice Krispie treat is fast, quick digesting carbs. So it's immediate fuel for your workouts. And does it have to be a Rice Krispie treat? No, it could also be something like fruit or pretzels. Now, I know I'm going to have people ask me about working out fasted. And I always say, this is up to you. I'm all about not complicating things and just doing what's best for you. So if you feel best when you show up to the gym on an empty stomach and you don't notice an impact to like your energy or how much you can lift, and you feel great with nothing in your stomach, work out fasted. On the other hand, if you notice that you're waking up first thing in the morning and you go to the gym and one, maybe you're already hungry, or two, you're like having a really hard time lifting at the same amount that you typically do, you're feeling really drained during your workout, you're hungry, then it can help to have that simple carb 15 to 30 minutes before you work out if you're working out first thing. So for me, I get up and I immediately go to the gym, but I have a banana while I'm feeding my dog. That way I'm getting in a quick digesting carb. I have a little bit of fuel, but I wait to have my full breakfast until after I work out. So before you work out, keep it really simple. You're either having that big meal or you're having your simple carb within 30 minutes of that first workout. Now, post-workout, this is where we want to restore our glycogen stores that we depleted during our workout with carbs. And we want to be eating enough protein to get the process of repairing and building our muscles started. So don't overcomplicate this. Post-workout, we're shooting for a mix of carb and protein just within 90 minutes of your workout. Don't overthink it. Don't worry about like specific amounts. Don't worry about like hitting it right on the 90-minute mark. Just try to get a mix of carbs and protein within 90 minutes of your workout. So this might look like a snack or it could be a bigger meal. So it could be banana and Greek yogurt, protein shake and fruit, a full meal with like chicken and rice, toast and eggs. Of course, if you're having a full meal, make it a full balanced plate with like a veggie or fiber and a little bit of fat. But for sure, at minimum, you want the carbs and protein. So super simple post-workout nutrition, carbs and protein within 90 minutes of finishing your workout. Biggest takeaway here, you guys, don't overthink it. Focus on doing the right kind of workouts first, doing them consistently, eating enough food overall, eating enough protein. Then once that's locked in, once you feel like really good about the basics and the foundations, then start to focus on the timing of things. So don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple. But I hope you guys found this episode helpful. And if there is ever a topic that you want me to dive into a little bit deeper, something more on the science or even something on the psychology standpoint, please shoot me a DM. Let me know what that topic is. I would absolutely love to hear from you. If you have any questions about this episode in general, shoot me an email. Again, I would love to hear from you. And I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. And I'll talk to you next week.